What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm back with another video, with this time once again, we're going to talk about Michael Jordan and focus in on his NBA Finals competition. And I feel like there's two major groups of fans. There's one group that says Jordan faced absolutely no competition, no great teams, no all-time great players. There's another group that says Jordan, he faced very good teams that are actually underrated historically. So I feel like this video is fairly important to get down to the truth of Jordan's Finals competition. Was it actually great, or was it below average compared to other NBA legends? So that being said, let's get into the video and really get down to the reason of why Jordan is 6-0 in the NBA Finals. So first up, with the 91 Lakers, Jordan's first ever Finals opponent. And this Lakers team won 58 games and the second best record in the Western Conference. Also in this season, they had the 5th best offensive rating and the 5th best defensive rating, one of only 2 teams, top 5 in both those categories. When we're looking at their roster, in the playoffs they had James Worthy, who averaged 21 a game, Magic, who averaged 22, Sam Perkins, who averaged 17, and Vlade Divac and Byron Scott, who both averaged 13 apiece. And this playoff run, they were one of 4 teams in the NBA who had 3 players averaging over 17 points per game. And we're looking at the 91 Lakers roster, you might be asking yourself, where is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and the Showtime Lakers? That's the fact with this team, they were not the Showtime Lakers, but they were still a very, very good team. And this season, they had the second highest championship odds at plus 450. And very quickly, let's do a blind comparison of the 91 Lakers versus the 88 Lakers, the last championship team with Kareem. On your left, you have one Lakers team, and on your right, another. And you can pause very quickly and look at both these stats. Now after pausing this video, the team on the left is the 91 Lakers, the team on the right is the 88 Lakers. And we're looking at both their stats, it is eerily similar in both these teams. And keep in mind, the 91 Lakers were not the Showtime Lakers, but they're still a very good Lakers team, even without Kareem. Now we'll look at their finals matchup versus the Bulls in Game 1. The Lakers actually won this game on a Sam Perkins 3-pointer. And after this game, the media had a lot to say about the Bulls as well as the Lakers.
The Lakers are tested, experienced in these situations. The Bulls are in the finals for the first time. Still, the home fans caught a breath. Okay, we've seen this before. We've got Michael Jordan. Michael will take the last shot. And he did, except... So tonight, knowing the next 3 games are in Los Angeles, the Bulls face a must-win. If they don't get it, their passionate fans could be seeing the last game in this building until November. That's how cruel and fickle the game can be at this level.
So that right there was a quick insight to the narrative after Game 1. People said Magic was the better player, James Worthy was better than Pippen, and overall Lakers team was more experienced and is better top to bottom. Now we'll look at this entire series. It went 5 games, and of course in Game 1 Sam Perkins had a game-winning 3, in a game LA won by 2 points. In Game 3 Jordan had a very clutch pull-up jumper that forced OT, and a game the Lakers very easily could have won. And in Game 5 the Bulls won by 7 points after it was tied going into the 4th quarter. So this series for the most part was very, very competitive. I think this Lakers team historically is very, very underrated simply because they didn't have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who at this time would have been very, very old. And the last thing I'll say about this series, after Game 5, listen to the announcers talk about this series and how surprising it was that Chicago won in dominant fashion.
The Chicago Bulls' domination of this series has to be considered a major surprise. Mike, there was no reason to believe that the Lakers would fall apart so dramatically.
I think it was a combination of things. I'm not quite sure that everyone gave the Bulls the credit they deserved throughout the season. I think everyone felt the balance of power was in the West this year, that Portland, in fact, was the best team, and when the Lakers got by them, that the Lakers then were just going to put the Bulls away. But the Bulls team was a deceiving team. They did it with a very intricate offense in the half-court area, the ability to score in transition, and then the great team defense.
Now looking at our next series with the 92 Finals with the Portland Trailblazers. This Blazers team had the best record in the Western Conference, winning 57 games. At this point in time, they had the second highest championship odds at plus 400. And Portland the previous year won 63 games, which again was the best in the Western Conference, and they had made the finals in 1990. And their big 3 was Drexler, a 6-time All-Star at this point, Kevin Duckworth, a 2-time All-Star, and Terry Porter, who was a 1-time All-Star in 91 and a future All-Star in 93. And looking at their team stats, they are 4th in points per game, 3rd in defensive rating, 7th in offensive rating, second in net rating, and second in SRS, one of only 2 teams, top 7 in all 5 of those categories. And if you look at the playoffs, this Portland team was 7 men deep. They had Drexler averaging 26 a game, that was 4th in the playoffs, Terry Porter averaging 21.4, that was 9th, the only team with 2 top 9 scorers in the NBA. They also had Jerome Kersey adding 16, Kevin Duckworth adding 12, Cliff Robinson adding 11, Danny Ainge adding 10, and Buck Williams adding 9. So this Portland team was very deep, they had championship experience, and top to bottom, a very good and well-coached team. Now, we're looking at the 92 finals in the series summary. In Game 1, Jordan had 35 points in the first half, an NBA Finals record, and Chicago blew out Portland. And skipping ahead to Game 5, at this point in the series, it was tied at 2 games apiece. But in this game, Jordan had 46 points on 61% shooting in Portland. Now in Game 6, the closeout game, the Bulls won this game by 4 points. But going into the fourth quarter, Portland had a 15-point lead that they would blow in epic fashion. At the end of this game, Jordan iced the series with 2 clutch free throws. So when looking at this series, there's really 2 critical moments, that being Game 5 and Game 6. In Game 5, Jordan, what if he doesn't have 46 points on 61% shooting on the road? The Bulls could have easily lost Game 5 if Jordan didn't bring his best. And in Game 6, Portland really should have won that game and never blew that big lead. And for the most part, this series should have gone 7 games. And I think Portland being so close to Game 7 once again shows how great they were. In this series, Jordan averaged 35.8 points per game on 53, 43, and 89 splits. It took that performance by Jordan to beat this Blazers team in 6 games, which once again shows this Portland team, they were legit and they were real championship contenders. Now next up, we have the 93 finals with the Phoenix Suns. And the Suns team, you could argue, was Jordan's best ever finals opponent. During the year, they had the best record in the NBA, winning 62 games. And it came to their team stats, they were first in scoring, first in offensive rating, first in threes made, first in SRS, and 4th in net rating. The only team in the NBA, top 5 in all those categories. And look at their roster, they had Charles Barkley, who was the MVP, averaging 26 a game. They had Kevin Johnson, averaging 17.8, who was an All-Star 91 as well as 90. We had Dan Marley averaging 15 a game, who was all defense as well as an all-star. We had Richard Dumas averaging 10.9, and Danny Ainge averaging 8.1, who finished second in the 6 Man of the Year voting. So when looking at the Suns team, they were the best offensive team in the NBA and had tons of firepower in the starting lineup as well as their bench. And if you want to know how good the Suns team was, watch this clip.
The Suns held the NBA's best record. They possessed its most valuable player.
Charles's teammates are bowing down to him in series.
And all season long, they had been hailed as a team of destiny.
Comes to Marley, a long 3. He got it! He got it! The Suns win!
Now they happily bask in the excitement of opening a championship series at home for the very first time.
And when looking at the NBA Finals in this series, it went 6 games, and all 6 games were decided by 10 points or less. In Game 2, it was a 3-point game, in Game 4, it was 6 points, and in Game 6, it was 1 point. And in total, both these teams averaged 106.7 points per game and had an offensive rating of 113. So in that respect, they were dead even in this series. And once again, it took an all-time great Jordan performance for the Suns team to lose. In this series, Jordan averaged 41 a game and had 4 straight 40-point games and 33 points in Game 6, and the John Paxson game-winning shot. Also in this series, it was a triple overtime game for the first time since 1976. So once again, this Suns team was very, very competitive with this Dynasty Bulls roster. And there was absolutely no blowouts or one-sided games. And if you want to be very simplistic, this series came down to the Bulls having the best player on the court, that being Michael Jordan, who averaged 41 points per game, an NBA Finals record. Now next up, we skip ahead 3 years to the 96 Finals with the 96 Seattle Supersonics. And this Sonics team had the second best record in the NBA, winning 64 games, only behind the Bulls, who won 72. When I look at their team stats, they were second in scoring, second in SRS, second in defensive rating, and second in net rating. And when looking at their overall roster, they had Shawn Kemp averaging 21, who was 8th in MVP voting. They had Gary Payton averaging 20.7, who was the Defensive Player of the Year, and finished 6th in MVP voting. You had Detlef Schrempf averaging 16, who was an All-Star 95 as well as 97, and you had Sam Perkins and Hershey Hawkins, both averaging 12.3 points per game. I think this Sonics team, from an overall perspective, was the best team Jordan played in the finals, as they're not only great on defense, they're also one of the top teams in the offensive categories. But really looking at the defense in this series, the Bulls as a team shot 41% from the field. Jordan shot 41.5, Pippen shot 34.3, Kukoc shot 42.3, Ron Harper shot 37.5, and Steve Kerr shot 30.3. That's how good the Sonics defense was, and how locked down of a defender Gary Payton was in his absolute prime. And also, one thing I have to note very quickly, this Sonics team swept the defending champion Houston Rockets, Stuart Hakeem, as well as Clyde Drexler. In the Western Conference Finals, they beat the Jazz in a thrilling 7-game series. And speaking of the Jazz, that was Jordan's next finals opponent in 1997. In Utah that year, won 64 games, the best record in the Western Conference. They were second in scoring, second in SRS, second in offensive rating, and second in net rating. And their roster, as always, had Karl Malone averaging 26 a game, was the MVP, John Stockton averaging 16, Jeff Hornacek averaging 15, and Byron Russell averaging 12. At this point for the Jazz, their main duo of Stockton and Malone had been together for the better part of a decade, and they finally broke through and made the NBA Finals in 1997. And we're looking at the series versus the Bulls. In Game 1, Jordan had a buzzer-beating jump shot, in a game the Bulls won by 2 points. In Game 4, it was a 5-point Jazz win, and in Game 5, Jordan had the iconic flu game where he had a clutch 3-pointer to give the Bulls a 2-point victory. And in Game 6, once again, it was very close, as the Bulls won by 4 points, and Steve Kerr added in the game-winning jump shot. And one thing I have to note from this series is that in 5 out of the 6 games, the Jazz had the lead or were tied going into the fourth quarter. So once again, this series was highly competitive down to the final quarter in virtually every game. And I think this series for Jazz fans can be summed up in 3 specific games. In Game 1, where Jordan had the buzzer beater, in Game 5, the flu game, and in Game 6 with Steve Kerr's jump shot. Now for a quote-unquote weak Jazz team, all 3 of those games could have gone Utah's way if Jordan missed his shots or if Steve Kerr folded in that final game. That's how good this Jazz team was and how close this series was. It came down to 3 moments and 3 specific shots. Now look at the 98 finals. Once again, the Bulls faced the Utah Jazz. In this year, Utah once again had the best record in the Western Conference, only losing 20 games. In their overall team stats, they are first in offensive rating, third in scoring, fourth in net rating, and fifth in SRS, one of only 3 teams, top 5 in all those categories. And for the most part, they had the exact same core as in 97. And we're looking at this final series. In Game 1, it was a 3-point Jazz win, Game 2, a 5-point Bulls win, where Jordan had 13 in the fourth quarter. In Game 4, it was a 4-point Bulls win, and in Game 5, a 2-point Jazz win. And in Game 6, as we all know, it was a 1-point Bulls win, with Jordan scoring 6 points in the last minute, the most iconic shot over Brian Russell. So once again, this Jazz team, it was a hard-fought series versus the Bulls, where unfortunately they came up short in some very close and competitive games. And the one thing I have to say is that John Stockton a lot of times gets called overrated by some NBA fans. But if you want to know how good he was, listen to Chris Webber talking about Stockton when he was 37 and out of his prime.
I lay him out on the screen. I'm talking about I lay him out, one of the best screens I ever did. Got my shoulder kind of in that head area too, to kind of make it a little dirty. He pops up off the ground, pats me on the butt and says, "Nice screen." Do you know how demoralizing that is? You know what I mean? So yeah, he was one of the toughest guys, and I loved it too. After that game, we would play him in the playoffs, and I would make rookies wait on the bus, and I would say, "Watch the baddest man in the world pull up." And they're like, "What do you mean?" They think I'm going to talk about like his cars and all this. And John Stockton would come to the game, literally in a minivan, pop his kids out, come in there, and bust us up. So yeah, he's a bad man.
So really in summary for this video, I think Jordan's finals opponents, at the worst, they were good teams, and at the best, they were very, very good teams on the borderline of being NBA champions. Look at the all-star players he faced in the finals. We had Magic Johnson, James Worthy, Clyde Drexler, Terry Porter, Kevin Duckworth, Charles Barkley, Kevin Johnson, Dan Marley, Sean Kemp, Gary Payton, Detlef Schrempf, John Stockton, and Karl Malone, each twice. I mean, that's a pretty deep list of players, for the most part, are all Hall of Famers. And we're looking at their overall teams once again, they were very, very good teams for their time, and definitely not weak competition for one Michael Jordan or the Chicago Bulls. So that right there is the end of the video. And in summary, Jordan's finals competition, if anything, they're underrated, and they definitely aren't overrated or weak competition. And as always, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, I'll see you guys next time.